Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. Last video we went to the junkyard and picked up our little LS engine there for my new project, or my upcoming project. That's going to be a slow learning process, so we're going to try to fit that in between getting parts for the Mustang and our cross cart here. I also picked up another little project. I figured, you know what, I can't be the one having all the fun around here. Plus my kids like to come up and hang out, have fun, help me video and all that stuff. So we picked up this little guy right here. We're going to call him the Silver Bullet, the little brother to Frankenstein here. But this one should be a lot quicker, a lot easier to put together or get up and running for the kids to tear up the yard with. I got another little, show you what we'll be putting on it actually. I got that big old engine right there sitting up underneath our bench. Say one of those Duramax 440s, makes about 18 horsepower stock. Figure it'd be plenty for this thing. We're not going to do anything radical with the engine yet. We'll keep it to, we'll keep the governor in it. We'll just keep it bone stock. Figure it should be enough for the kids to tear up the yard with. So we're going to fit them in here in a couple videos in between football and school. So that should be a lot of fun. Anyways, my project for today is we've got the pan off our C4 transmission, already pulled the extension and the filter off. I got to get the rest of the bolts out of our valve body so we can get it over here on the table. And we are going to be installing or converting it over to manual valve body, and we're adding a trans brake. I picked this kit up from Broader Performance. I will put a link to that in the description. Now, this is one of those DIY projects. They sell you everything you need in the kit. They got some online instructions that you can download. Tells you and shows you what you need to do. It's got pictures and all that stuff. So, this will be the furthest I've actually torn into an automatic transmission. So, I'll be learning this as the same time you guys are. So hopefully when I get it all done, put it back in the car, it works. But anyways, like I said, I got to finish getting the valve body out. Now this is, that kit is for a 70 and up, and that is what our transmission is. I believe this one's a 71. So I got to remove this little 5/16 bolt so I can get the detent off. And then count around, because I got 9 3/8 bolts that go all the way through, holding the valve body in place. And then I'll worry about getting it apart once we get it over here on the table. So that's what I'm going to do. I'll go ahead and get those bolts out, get our valve body over here on the table so we can start taking it apart and figuring out what we need to do. Alright, valve body's out. I've got it sitting right here in our little turkey pan. Now I recommend you guys get one of these. They're like $1 at the grocery store. Go ahead and put yourself some paper towels in it. That way during the disassembly process, if you drop a spring or a little ball or clip or anything, it doesn't have far to travel. And it'll save you a whole lot of time. Now, I have already had this valve body just the two halves apart. I've already taken the bolts to split it just to see where the check balls would be, and basically just to find the easiest way to take these two halves apart without losing anything. So here's what we're going to do. First thing I'll want to do is I'll pull this little E-clip out so we can get the gear selector valve out of the way, kind of keep from damaging it. We'll just get it out of the way. After I pull that out, then we'll remove this 3/8 bolt and this 3/8 bolt right here. That'll be it for this side. Once those two bolts are out, you can go ahead and flip the valve body over. Go ahead and remove all of these 5/16 bolts on the top here, and that'll separate this top section from the lower section here. And the reason do it like this is because this lower section does have a check ball in it. This way it'll keep you from losing that check ball. This upper section also has a check ball, but it'll be contained because the separator plate is still being held in by this 5/16 bolt from the underside. But we will not be using this part of the valve body anymore. We'll actually be getting rid of that and setting up to use this guy here that came in the kit. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to go ahead and get the camera set up. We'll get the gear selector valve out, get those 2 3/8 bolts out, and then turn it over, get the rest of 5/16 out, and get this thing separated and see what we got to do from there. All right, so got the valve body separated, got the 2 halves. Now, the only thing we're going to need from this side here is our little 5/16 bolt. Go ahead and get that out right now. Okay, we'll get that out. And I'm just going to go ahead and put that over here in our new one, because that's where it's going to go here. And now we can move this whole piece out of the way. Just kind of set it off to the side somewhere else. Don't need to worry about the separator plate. Don't need to worry about the gasket or any of the other check balls or anything in here. Just all we need is that bolt. Go ahead and set this guy right on over here, just out of the way. And now all you gotta do now is we're gonna worry about this section here. I'm gonna go ahead, get it set up in our little pan, turn our pan to the side, and I'm basically going to set it up to where I can get everything apart just like their online instructions. Go ahead and start getting everything out, and we'll get our little tool set up so we can start milling all the little points, adding our check balls to everything. So it's kind of neat getting into this. I mean, working on the transmission's kind of something I've always wanted to do, or at least learn how. And what better place to start than doing your own or building your own manual valve body. So like I said, we'll get this set up, get it orientated the same way I see on the instructions they have on their site. Get this thing apart and start getting ready to mill the slots and installing our little check balls. All right, we got all our valves out, or all the valves that need to come out. Now, I will tell you guys that some of these valves are a little tricky, but every single one of them has a spring on it. So if you take a little pick, you can press down on the top there and just kind of work it in and out against the spring. Do that. It might take a little while, but you keep doing that, it will help clean up whatever is in its way, and it will push itself out of its hole. My pressure regulator, my pressure regulator was a little bit of a pain, so I did have to get in there just a little bit. Used a really small flathead here, or a regular screwdriver, got in there and just kind of pushed it a little bit. Being careful not to get up against these edges. You don't want to scratch or scar or even dimple any of these. It'll get a bad seal against your separator plate over there. So Other than that, they all came out fairly easy. Did have to play with it a little bit. So now is a good time to go through our bag and match up the correct size ball to where they say to put it on the instructions here. So like some of them put them in between the springs. It says here, I don't think this one gets a spring, but I'll know for sure when I go to put it back together. But all these guys get a check ball in between the springs. This is the spring that came in our kit, and they say just that spring alone is 200 psi. Or you can do that spring and the stock spring untrimmed, give you 260. What I've done is I've trimmed a little bit off that spring to add with that. And they say when you do that, it'll be between around roughly 240 psi. I trimmed it a little bit shorter than what was in the picture, so it may not be 240. It may be 230, but somewhere between 2 and 240. That's what I did. Like I said, you guys can, if you're doing this to your stuff, you can figure out or make a best guess on what pressures you need. I'm not 100% sure, so I figured I'd go somewhere in the middle and start there. But also, I've gone ahead and put little pieces of paper towel in between the channels. I'm going to use my little die grinder there with this bit. And it says to go through because I have to run a channel through here. Clean that channel up a little bit and then run a channel right here. As well as come over here to open up this chamber and this chamber. Put a channel right here to connect these two. And another one right there. So I'm going to go ahead and use my little Dremel. Go ahead and put the channels in that I need. And it says roughly about 200 thousandths deep. I figured, or 200 thousandths wide. Double check that real quick. So let's see here. It's like you think I'd be more prepared for this. Yeah, 200 thousandths deep. And I figured as long as the channel is about the same width. So if I clean that up there and put a channel in here and make it as wide as, say, like the distance or the width of all these other smaller channels, will probably be pretty good. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and get those channels ground into the valve body there, and I'll be back here in a second to show you guys what it looks like. Okay, we got our channels all milled out, and here's what they look like. So I just got the one going from there, there to match the picture. Also got the two over here, and of course the one over here. So all those are all ground out to the 200 thousandths depth like they wanted. And pretty close to being the same width across as these other channels, maybe a tad bit bigger. Now, as you can see, I've gone ahead and there's our pan with all our springs and valves that need check balls. Went ahead and put that down there out of the way and took the remaining valves out of our valve body. Now, I probably should have done that already, but I didn't. I think I got a little excited. Anyways, took the rest of the valves out. Didn't want to mix them up, so the ones that need the check balls are down there in our can. Now we'll go ahead and flip this thing around on our table here. That way I can use our little center punch wherever it is I got it. There it is. We'll grab our little hammer, center punch, make some marks, and make sure to drill out the holes as it says in the instructions there. So, looks like we're going to have one here. We're going to have one right about here in this guy, and one down here, as well as one over here. So go ahead and get those holes drilled out. Now it's that size drill bit, roughly it's close to 1/8, I believe. it's in between the numbers they give you on the directions. So, and I use this guy to mic them all out, make sure that they're all the same depth, at least close to the same width. And then I'm going to use this as well to help double check the check balls that go on those springs. So it's a good idea to have one of those. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and get the places marked, get the holes drilled out, so that we can get this thing cleaned back up and start assembling it so we can get the thing back in the car. All right, got all our holes drilled in our valve body here. As you can see, we got the 1, 2, 3, 4. Now placement is kind of crucial. That's why I kept picking it up and checking. If you flip it over, you'll see if I can zoom in for you, or at least get it to look. Each one of those holes kind of lines up in the center of one of those channels. So use the center punch. Definitely look to make sure that it's right where you need it. But those all ended up in a good spot. It did not take a whole lot of pressure to drill through this thing. So if you're doing it yourself, really just slight pressure. Be ready to catch it. That way it doesn't go through and want to scar the wall, or maybe catch or damage anything. So basically the weight of the drill was enough to go through it. So I've got it all cleaned up now. Used some brake cleaner to clean it out real good. Then some air went through everything. Made sure it was all pretty much clean and ready to go. So now I've got a little cap full of our Type F transmission fluid that I'll dip each one of these valves back in before putting it back in the valve body. But right now we're gonna start putting this thing back together and get her in the car. All right, first half of the valves are installed in our valve body here. Now, before I go any farther, I'm just kind of gonna go over a couple things and show you what I've got. So we've got all the valves laid out again. And you can see we've got our springs here for our pressure regulator. We got the check balls in each one of the valves they're supposed to go in. Now there's 5 check valves that came in this kit total. And they all have different sizes. They got 4 steels and 1 plastic. The little plastic one goes inside the upper half of the supplied valve body piece. And then the other 4 go down here in the valves. You're gonna have two steel check balls the same size, one really small one, one big one. All easily, you can tell the difference in them easily, so it'd be hard to mix them up. I thought I'd probably mix them up. I was going to use my little caliper here to measure the sizes, but when you get them laid out next to each other, then you can easily tell the differences. So another thing is they say you might have to grind off a little bit there to get this retainer back in, and you might have to grind off a little bit here to keep the end of this valve poking above the lower half here. You want that flush so they can put that piece back on. So we'll go ahead and I'll get those installed, see if I got to grind anything, but I want to let you guys know because you may or may not have to. Like, this is a first time for me. I'm learning how to do this as I go, and I figured I'd make this little video too because some of you out there may have the same questions or come across the same predicament as me. So another thing I wanted to point out as well, if you are not running a trans brake, it says you do not need to grind these 2 slots here, you just need that one. But since I'm running a trans brake, I had to put those slots in there as well. Another thing, if we come on over here, regardless if you're running a trans brake or not, they want you to pull out the modulator here. Pull that guy out. Make sure you pull this valve and this pin. If you're not running a trans brake, you can go ahead and put this piece back in just for the manual valve body, keeping those pieces out. That way you can plug the hole. But I am running a trans brake, so I will be installing the solenoid, the pin, the spring, and this guy as well. So this is 2 different styles for this kit, just a manual valve body or a manual valve body with trans brake. They have just the manual valve body, they've got forward and reverse patterns. The trans brake, this one's a reverse pattern, so keep that in mind. Another thing too, this kit does not come with a gasket, so it just comes with the separator plate. This is a gasket I had in a kit. And if you line this gasket up to the top of this guy here, I'll do that right now. Get this guy out of the way. But let's see. Make sure I get it lined up for you. There we go. You see there's a bunch of cross feed with that gasket on there. And if you were to put that gasket there and then put this guy here, then you start noticing it's blocking a bunch of the holes that came on the plate. So I am assuming, and it's aluminum, so it's kind of soft, that we are not running a gasket. Put it back on. Everything lines up the way it's supposed to. All the channels are covered or not covered. All the holes are where they need to be. So I am assuming it does not require a gasket. We are gonna put it all together, bolt down this thing, bolt it up together. These little guys here, the 5/16, are between 40 and 50 inch-pounds. I looked them up using my little transmission book over there. So we'll make sure to get it put together and torqued correctly. And we'll get this thing installed in the car, get some fluids in it, get it on the ground. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this thing all put together real quick so we can get it installed. I'll get fluid in the thing, we'll get it on the ground, and see about getting a test drive in, see how everything functions. I will not be, however, hooking up the trans brake yet. I am waiting on a couple other parts. But that is another cool thing about this, is you do not need to activate the trans brake in order for reverse to work. So it'll function normally, just manual shifted without activating the trans brake. So that was another selling point for me on this kit. But anyways, like I said, I'm gonna go ahead and get this thing finished being put back together, get it in the car so we can get some fluids in it, get it on the ground, take this thing for a test drive. All right, valve body is all reassembled and installed in the transmission. I'm getting ready to put the pan on, but before I do, I kind of want to go over something with you guys real quick. Now, if you are running a factory style pan and filter, you probably won't have to worry about it. But if you're like me and you're running this aftermarket extension here with an aftermarket pan, most likely you'll have to drill 2 holes in this extension, and those holes are for the dump. If you do not clear or drill the holes or make sure that they're not blocked, you will build excessive pressure in the transmission, and they say you'll most likely damage your front pump. So definitely make sure to check that. Now, I did it before I put the 2 halves together, and that was I put the extension on our new part of the valve body, and then went from the back side with a little pick, scribed the holes, and then I drilled them out with a step bit. Sure, they don't have to be precise. I know the picture on the instructions, they're kind of, it's not exact, so, but as long as they're there, it should keep you from damaging anything. Another thing too, if you're like me and you're running this aftermarket pan, you will most likely have to clearance the front and the back. Now these I already did once before to clear the factory valve body, but now that we have the new one, I had to clearance it because these little ends right here, the front and back of this part of the valve body is a little more pronounced. Sticks out just a tad bit farther. Runs into the pan and it prevents me from actually getting a good seal. So, but anyways, now that I've got that out of the way, showed you guys what to kind of look for that, I'm going to go ahead now, get everything buttoned up on the transmission, get it on the ground, get some fluid in it. So hopefully I'll be back in a second and we should be able to take this thing on a test drive. All right, car is on the ground, moves under its own power. Feels pretty good so far, just pulling it out of the shop. So, got my wife with me. She's gonna be doing some videoing, so we're gonna take this thing out for a little test drive, just to see how it feels. So, I'm excited. First time doing something like this. Doing the old manual valve body. If I didn't mention it, this is a reverse manual valve body now. I converted it over. So, might take a little getting used to, but we're gonna go ahead and get it, take it for a little test drive and see how it does. All right, we are back in the shop, and I've got to say, this is probably the best upgrade I've done to this car in a really long time. Good firm shifts. Didn't feel like it was slipping the gears. I mean, when you hit the gear selector or the shifter, you shift, you felt it. It was right now. And that is really cool. The car seemed happier with that. Transmission temp seemed happier with that. It was just a whole lot of fun, kind of like a different driving experience, really, with this. Just excited with this upgrade. It felt really good. Makes me happy. The fact that we were able to pull the valve body out, disassemble it on the table, kind of go through the instructions on how to put it back to, on what to do, on where to drill, where to slot it, where to add the check balls. So I'm really, it was fun. It was fun. And I will tell you this right now, this valve body, the way it shifts and the way it handles right now is definitely going to show me the next weakest part in this transmission. So I may have it out sooner than I want, but that's okay. I've got a little bit more confidence now that if I can tear that apart and clean it up, put it back together and have it work, we'll step up and do the transmission now. So we'll see how long it lasts. Really though, the transmission's been a trooper. It's been nothing but abused. So, especially from going naturally aspirated, then I switched up the turbo and ran it just wrong with the turbo on it all these years. If it was naturally aspirated and I made that much horsepower, it probably wouldn't have been fine, but because we're running boost, the vacuum modulator isn't working the way it's supposed to. It's not telling the transmission. So, if I had to suggest anything to you guys out there at all is, if you're making a bunch of horsepower, definitely upgrade the valve body. So I will put a link to that company that I got these parts from. They make quite a few of them. I'm overall happy with the product. So I can't wait to get the trans brake solenoid wired up just to see how that feels. But like I said, I'll leave a link to all of it. They got it for full manual forward pattern, full manual reverse pattern. The manual reverse pattern with the trans brake is just what I installed. So, and they got different ones. They got a bunch of other stuff. You can check them out. I'm not sponsored by them at all. I'm just extremely happy with the product and the way it went in and the way the car feels. So, but anyways, I am going to end this video right here. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hope it helps you with making plans or a decision on upgrading parts in your transmission as well. If you're out there and you're doing this kit and you happen to stumble upon this video, leave a comment. Let me know how it helped you out. So, but anyways, thank you guys again for hanging out, watching. Hit that like button for me. Share it with your friends. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, please hit that subscribe button for me. Help me grow. So, again, thank you guys for hanging out. Hope you enjoyed. I'll catch you on the next one.